An inch. Give me an inch, thanks. No. Good morning, everybody. Shalom, Boker Tov. Marty, Dan, Thanksgiving. We have so much to be grateful for. Not only did God give us His Torah, which is God's gift to mankind, but together with that Torah, He gave us the crown jewel of Torah, which is the Kabbalah, the secret Torah, which was taught only to closely guarded circles of students for thousands of years until 500 years ago. The Arizal was the one that taught mitzvah legalei seisa chachma. From now on, it's a mitzvah to disseminate this wisdom, the secret wisdom. And it was the Baal Shem Tov who turned that into a system of Chassidus, a way of life. And it was the Alter Rebbe whose celebration of freedom we celebrated yesterday and the day before, in the 19th and 20th of Kislev, that turned it into a rational form of study. Today we're learning the Maimer of the Rebbe Rashab Yodaita Moskva. Thank you, Dan. The Maimer of the Rebbe Rashab, which is all about, it's the fifth Chabad Rebbe. Now, the fifth Chabad Rebbe was known as the encyclopedia of Chabad philosophy. See, if the Alter Rebbe was the first one to turn, so if the Arizal made Kabbalah public, from private to public, and if the Baal Shem Tov made it from public to practical, wow, this is good. I'm coming up with this right now. And if the Alter Rebbe took it from practical to rational, then it was the Rebbe Rashab, this Rebbe, who took it from rational to granular. So the Arizal, private to public. The Baal Shem Tov, public to practical. The Alter Rebbe, practical to rational. The Rebbe Rashab took it from rational to granular. That's the fifth Rebbe, Rebbe Rashab, Rebbe Shalom Devber. And he's buried in Rostov. You ever been there? Rostov on Don. So that's what we're learning today. As we are learning, hi Winston from Jakarta. As we're learning today, the next step in our journey through this discourse. Now, let me just summarize for you the flow. We started off with a question. It says in the verse that Havaya and Elohim is all one. The two names of God are one. Now, we can't understand what that means, so we said Havaya means revelation, the lights, and Elohim is concealment, the vessels. They seem to be opposites. How could they possibly be one? That was our opening question. We gave an answer. We said, well, vessels make it practical. Vessels make the lights usable, right? Like refrigerators make electricity usable, right? It just makes it functional. So we said that actually the vessels do reveal. They make it relatable. So through hiding, they make it relatable. So we said they're the same thing. The lights and the vessels. Havaya and Elohim is all about revelation. Then we said, you can't say that. Because they're hiding 99% of the light and they're revealing only 1% of the light. But they're hiding the vast majority. Right, that's all you can manage. So they're hiding the vast majority of the light and they're revealing only the small minority of the light. It's not just quantity, it's quality. The etzema, or the essence of the light, is hidden. It's only the external ray, the consequence, the chitzonius, or the externality of the light that's revealed. Think of the analogy of the electricity in the fridge, right? You don't have the raw electric current. You got refrigeration. You got cold beers. So the cold beer is an expression of electricity. It's not actual electricity. You can't say that electricity is being revealed. If you're going to be true and honest about it, you can't say the refrigerator expresses electricity. It expresses a very diluted form of an expression of a consequence of it, right? So we said we're back to square one. We cannot really say that the light reveals and so do the vessels. The vessels conceal the light. The lights reveal the light. And therefore they're in conflict. So we were back to square one. We were back to square one. Second. And here, we now move on to a brilliant new step. And in this brilliant new step, we're going to answer the question in a new way. we're going to say, okay, granted. The light reveals, the vessel conceals. But your assumption is that concealing is the opposite of revealing. Is that a fact? Is it a fact that concealing is the opposite of revealing? The Rebbe Rashab is going to argue now, and he's going to say, nope, it's not.
It's 100% concealing.
Well,
concealing.
The analogies, he's going to give us 3 analogies now. And in these analogies, he's going to prove to us that without that concealing is a vital step towards revealing. That without the concealment, you would never be able to reach the revelation. Okay? And he gives us a few analogies. Okay? So the first one,
what page are we on?
We're on page, bottom of page 12 is sort of where we're starting. What we're covering today is basically bottom of page 12 until no, hang on, I'm sorry. No, before that. We're doing bottom of 9 till bottom of 12. That's what we're doing. Bottom of 9 till bottom of 12. This concept can be explained. Okay? So that's what we're going to do now. And let me actually read it inside with you so we get a little bit of the words, okay? Bottom of page 9. This concept can be explained. Good morning, Elaine, Mickey, and Winston. Oh, there you are. Okay, I couldn't tell who was on. So Mickey's in Jersey, I think. Elaine is in Jersey. Elaine, we missed your husband this morning, let me tell you. Winston, a pleasure to study with you, my friend. Okay, good. So here we are. So let's discuss this idea. I want to just prepare you for where we're going. The Rebbe Rashab is really gonna just transform our perception of concealment by saying that concealment is actually a vital step towards revelation. Watch this, right? This concept can be explained by developing the analogy of the expression of the soul's powers through the limbs of the body. We started the analogy of the soul animating the body, light in the vessels. And we said that when the light is in the vessel, the light is really very, very restricted. The essence of the light is hidden. We said that the soul's ability to see spirituality is gone when it's in the body. That's what we said earlier, right? So if we extend this analogy as reflected in the verse, from my flesh I will perceive godliness, since man was created in the image of the spiritual realms above, as it is written. Okay, look, I think I'm losing here in the wording. I forget the wording, right? I don't want to get lost. Let me just say this. The analogy is like this. Man was created in the image of God, right? There's a verse in Job that says, from my flesh I perceive godliness. From my flesh I perceive godliness. Why is that? Because man is created in the image of God. So there's actually a key to spirituality within our own God, within our own bodies. When we learn about the relationship between our soul and our body, that serves as the metaphor, as the mirror, image of God, of God. So within this metaphor is encoded the secret to much of our spirituality and our godliness. Okay. So what? No, but let me just explain this point. It's like this. So what is the point that we're saying? We're going to explain now that when it comes to wisdom, for example, so wisdom in the brain, right? This analogy we used earlier, we said wisdom before it goes into the body is able to perceive and understand godliness. When it comes into the body, it's now able to understand money and politics. But godliness doesn't come naturally to the soul that's inside of the body. So we said earlier that the light of the soul is very, very much hidden when it's in the body. But now we're going to flip it around and say like this: that the brain, the ability to conceive an idea, is vitally dependent on our ability to limit the scope of the idea. It's only when you limit the scope of the idea that you're able to conceive an idea. You can't say, okay, I'm going to think about a solution for everything. Like, hello. It's only going to say, look, I've got a problem. The problem is from this point to that point. It involves this person, that person, and the other person. This is what I need. This is what my obstacle is. Okay, defined. We're not trying to solve peace in the Middle East right now. We're not solving, intercontinental ballistic missile. We know we're talking about one topic, one problem. Once you identify the problem, you're halfway to the solution. Identifying the illness is halfway to the cure. Oh, you're contracting the light. It's by contracting the light, by concealing, that you're able to come to the revelation of Chachma, right? Which means that the wisdom, that the wisdom needs the concealment in order to be able to reveal, right? And another example of this is when it comes to decisions, you couldn't, just like it comes to conception of an idea, so too when it comes to a decision. You cannot come to a decision unless you're able to make parameters. This is what we're talking about. This is what we're not talking about. You can only make a decision when you say this affects this, that, and not that. When you're able to understand the scope, when you limit, that's when you're able to come to clarity. So let's read this idea in the text of here. Let's see how it goes. Okay. So again, bottom of page 9. If you have the book, if you don't, just follow along. It's the second last paragraph on page 9. This concept can be explained by developing the analogy of the expression of the soul's powers through the limbs of the body, as reflected in the verse in Job. From my flesh, I will perceive godliness. We're going to use the body as the map to understand godliness. Since man was created in the image of the spiritual realms above, as it is written, let us make man in our image and in our form. From an analysis of the operation of the powers of the soul in the body, we can perceive the makeup of the spiritual realms. So what is that? Go ahead.
Just wanted to ask before I forget. So, in the image of God, but do we believe that God has a human body image?
It doesn't say that he has a physical body. Why would he have a physical body?
No, I didn't think he was of God.
The image of God.
That's always been it's been Michelangelo,
Yeah, to believe that God has any physical form is idolatrous.
I don't.
When we say in the image of God, we're saying, we're saying
made in his image.
that doesn't mean a physical
It
image.
doesn't mean
No.
literally.
It means conceptually speaking.
Yeah.
Just like we have, for example, our right arm represents the attribute of chesed, kindness. Our left arm represents the attribute of strictness, severity, right? So you can ask a question: is God kind or is he strict? You say both. Like you have two arms, push, pull, right? You have two, and they work hand in hand, literally, right? So you have God also as kindness and strictness, image of God, right? So he has two characteristics, and it's not one or the other. It's a metaphor, right? Good. Now, what are we going to learn now from this metaphor of man? Within each of the powers of the soul, there's also a potential for revelation and a potential for limitation and concealment. For example, the power of intelligence, which conceives ideas, is drawn down from the essential power of intellect within the soul, which is an unbounded potential for all types of intellectual revelations. The soul has a power of coming up with countless ideas. They all have their source in this essential power of intellect. So we have this power of Havaya, this power of revelation within our soul. We're talking about thinking right now, thoughts, right? Of ideas, right? But thus we see that the essential power of intellect contains the potential for revelation. The capacity to conceive and express any intellectual concept. But it also possesses the power of limitation to confine the scope of any concept. And this is of fundamental importance. Why? Because every idea and concept must have a limit. Every idea and concept must have a limit to its scope. It may be extended to a particular point, but no further. For if one thinks abstractly and extends the scope of an idea beyond its limits, one will begin to deviate and lose sight of the truth. If you don't limit your conversation and you just have an open thought, you'll be scattered all over the place. The only way that you'll be able to really come up with a concept is if you understand what it is that you're trying to do. Am I making a car, or am I solving the Iran peace crisis, right? What are we doing? Right, but when you understand exactly, when you say, okay, I'm not talking about politics, I'm only talking about car design. Which car design? Well, we're talking about green car design. Are we talking about fancy car design? Are we talking about cheap car design? Whatever it is, you got to make up your mind. When you decide that you're going to limit the scope of your thought process, that's when you're able to conceive an idea. So the limitation is a vital stepping stone to Chachma. Chachma is that potential for revelation. So you cannot have revelation without the prior concealment.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. So you see where we're going with this. What we're going to say with this is that even though Elohim hides, nevertheless, concealment is not in conflict with the revelation. They actually are vitally important for each other. Right? And we're going to bring two more examples of this. The next example we're going to bring is with the one I mentioned before, is about decisions. Decisions need parameters. So I'm going to keep on going. Similarly, when one desires to come to a decision regarding a particular matter, and there are conflicting opinions, i.e., there are several perspectives which lean towards a ruling that is permitted and others which lean toward a ruling that is forbidden. So you got to make up your mind. It's impossible to reach a final decision unless there is a clear definition and limit to these ideas. If you say, okay, these are all the ideas that we take into consideration and no more. If you say, well, we're still open, we're still taking ideas and we're making a decision. Hello, we got to make it. Testimony is now over. And then we're going to make a verdict. But if they keep the testimony open, how are you going to come to a verdict? You got to close. You got to make a decision and say it's now no longer. It's now done. In the same manner, it is impossible to study a Talmudic passage with the intent of arriving at a decision of halachic decision, some ruling, right? Unless one defines and limits one's ideas. When these limits are established, one can see. Now we can say, okay, this is what this guy said, this is what that guy said. Now we can figure it out, one advantage of one idea over the other. When these limits are established, one can see the advantage of one idea has over another one. And that's one can perceive the truth and reach a decision. You can say, you know what? We don't like this suggestion because of that. We like this suggestion because of that. So we're going to go with this one. Okay, good. Mazel tov, right? When you're trying to buy a new car, what do you say? You say, well, it's going to be a Tesla or a Mercedes-Benz or any other car that comes up, and we're going to make a decision. You can't do that. You're going to say, no, it's a Tesla, Mercedes-Benz. And now we're going to make a decision.
You buy an Audi.
Right? Otherwise, you're going to vary the sugar, right? So that's the second example that shows that limitation is a vital step towards revelation. This is not rocket science. It's not that complicated. It's abstract.
Yeah,
But it's understandable. Let's do one third example, one final example. And this is going to be, let me introduce it. It's about a teacher to students. When the teacher teaches the students, he can't just say everything that's on his mind. He's got to filter it. He's got to limit it. He's going to say, who am I talking to? Am I talking to college students? Am I talking to preschoolers? Am I talking to people that read or people that don't read? Am I talking to people that speak my language or not? It's going to make a big difference to how you're going to present, right? And even if they do speak your language, have they ever heard of this concept before or not? Which, by the way, is the reason why it's so hard to talk to YouTube. That's right. I have no idea if the person I'm talking to is like,
that's why,
check that.
That's why this
You
is
don't know.
you need to do.
I need a live audience. I have to have a live audience.
100%.
If I was talking to YouTube right now, I'd be like, you know what? I'm out of here.
I'm out of here. No, and that's what's great. It's great for us and it's great for you. 'Cause
But you could have 20 people sitting here and you might, all with, that look just like you, dress like you, but inside they're not getting anything.
Well, you can read their body language. You can read their faces. That's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm keeping on going. So let me. This sort of analogy is when the teacher needs to deliver the message, he first has to limit the light. What's going to happen if the teacher doesn't limit the light? Dan, imagine you started teaching me about financial investment strategy, options. You started telling me about option strategy, unfiltered.
what the heck are you talking about?
You'd lose me on hello. You know what I mean? You'd be like naked puts, covered calls. I still, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
I don't understand it either.
But imagine you started telling somebody about covered calls and naked puts, right? They'd be like, I don't know what language you're talking. You know what I mean? You got to think here. How about this, Rabbi? You give me an analogy of someone sponsoring a kiddush. Next Thanksgiving. Well, we don't know what the price of food is going to be. So do we lock in the rate now? Am I in the right direction? Right? So this has got to do with it, right? And then you can say, okay, now that you understand the kiddush, it's your world. Now I can tell you about, a foreign currency and whatever else, right? So you got to think about how you're going to filter it. By the way, the wisdom, King Solomon says one of the wisest of all men, was that he was able to talk even to an idiot. What's the wisdom of talking to an idiot? To talk to a fool. He was able to make 3,000 metaphors to go down from his level all the way down. Oh, you still don't understand? Okay, let me give you another example. Oh, you still don't understand? Let me give you another example. Can you imagine you keep on diluting it and diluting it? It's not just another example, it's a lower example. And that's the filtration, the limitation, the dilution of the idea that a wise person has to do in order to be able to deliver the message effectively. Let's see this idea inside. Similarly, in the communication of an idea from a mashpia, which is a teacher, source of influence, to a makabel, which is a student or a recipient, it is necessary for the mashpia to condense, veil, and limit the concept he's teaching so that it can be grasped by the makabel, by the recipient. Were the mashpia, the teacher, to reveal the essence of his appreciation of an idea, again, were the mashpia to reveal the essence of his appreciation of an idea, it would be impossible for the recipient to comprehend it. Instead, it's necessary for him to conceal the essence of his appreciation of the idea, reveal only what is on the level of the recipient. Similarly, it is necessary for the mashpia to limit the scope of his appreciation of the idea so that it does not extend beyond the appropriate limits of the recipient's ability to grasp it. For if it extends beyond those limits, it will not be on the level that can be grasped by the capacities of the recipient. So, the way I learn this discourse, this mimer, I see much of my daily experience, much of life reflected through this discourse. So imagine if I came here and I said, and I started giving you all the applications of this discourse. You want to know what I'm talking about? Like what? Imagine you start talking about clip. A clip is a concept that we can relate to these days, right? And we start talking about clip in terms of marketing, or in terms of celebrities, or in terms of, the way the world operates, right? And you start talking to your friends over dinner without any introduction. They'll be like, dude, what are you smoking? What are you talking about, right? But if you start off and you say there's a concept and it's called this, and it's in the context of this idea, and this is what we're talking about, they can start to build. You're limiting the light.
You're limiting, but by doing that, you reveal.
Why do we need three analogies? Why do we need three analogies for the same thing? Why is the Rebbe Rashab bringing us three analogies? It's a didactic, remember. We're changing the way we think. So first of all, you need three analogies to be able to see three parts of your life. The first example was your own personal intelligence within yourself, right? The second one was a decision in a courtroom. The third one was teaching. So first of all, its applications in different parts of our lives to be able to help us see the world through the lens of this new perspective. But also, I believe that the first two examples were a limitation on the light, in limitation in the quantity of the light. We were limiting the scope, the quantity of the light, to say, okay, we're not taking any more suggestions to testimony. We're not hearing any more testimony. Now starts the verdict. Or you're saying, in order to come up with an idea, I'm going to say this is the scope. We're not talking about any other subjects. But in the third example, it was a qualitative limitation of the light, qualitative concealment, where the mashpia, the teacher, is saying, look, I'm going to filter the light down to something more simplistic. It's a qualitative limitation. Exactly, to the person I'm talking to, right? And that is where we can now conclude that we've learned something. That we've now learned that the assumption with which we started today, that concealment is the opposite of revelation, and therefore Havai and Elikim can't be one. We're redefining that. The very premise. We're saying concealment is really not in conflict with the revelation. It's actually part and parcel with it. Ronald Collins. So in this way, you are explaining Tzimtzum effect on human activity 100%. Tzimtzum is not uniquely godly. Tzimtzum is a limitation. God limits his light to be able to engage with us, and we limit our lights to engage with each other. Ron, when you start talking to me about what's it called? What does he specialize in? It's called the infectious diseases, right? He starts telling me about viruses and parasites and bacteria. Half the time I don't know what you're talking about, right? But if you limit it nicely for me, then I might know what you're talking about, right? So you have to make it tzimtzum within yourself, for sure. 100%, right? But now we're going to blow our minds with a magnificent quote from the Kabbalah, which takes this idea and puts it in the context of the analog. We've been talking about analogies today, 3 analogies. Decisions within your own mind, courtroom verdicts, and we spoke about teaching to mentoring to students. But now we're going to apply to the analog, which is Havaya and Elokim, which is the way that Hashem operates. Thus we see that there is a power of limitation which defines concepts. This power of limitation also has its source in the essential power of intellect itself. So the power of limitation is the other hand of the power of revelation, just like you have a right hand and a left hand. That analogy was exact, by the way. Just like you have a right hand and a left hand, where the right hand gives and the left hand takes. Right hand is kindness, giving. Left hand is discipline, strictness. It pulls. So there's a push and a pull. So to God, we created in his image. He also has a push and a pull, a give and a take, a reveal and a conceal. And they're not 2 different tracks. They're the same. It's like one person. You can't say, well, there's going to be 2 Rabbi Viglers, because I saw Rabbi Vigler give something and I saw Rabbi Vigler take something. So it's got to be 2 different people. No, it's the same person. He can give and he can take. It's the right hand, the left hand. It's not a conflict. So when God gives, when Havaya gives and Elohim takes, it's the same Havaya. It's the same God, right? Which is doing that, right? So there's no conflict. Havaya and Elohim can still be one. We're still in the abstract. It's still an idea. It's a concept over here, guys. But it's going to become very, very relevant down to earth soon. So let's just read this idea inside. Just as that power is the source for the revelation of intelligence, the power of intellect is the source of the revelation of intelligence, to conceive of all intellectual ideas, so too it is the source for the power of limitation that defines these ideas. These are the potentials of chesed, kindness, and gevura, strictness, in the essential power of intellect. So there's kindness of intellect, giving. There's strictness of intellect, which is taking. The attributes of chesed are the source for the potential to reveal ideas, and the attributes of strictness, gevura, are the source of the potential to limit and define. We are forced to say that both of these potentials have their source in the essential power of intellect. For the only way we can put limits on an intellectual idea or bring a concept down to a lower level of understanding is through the use of our minds. It's our minds that limit the quality or the quantity of an idea. Our other potentials, our will and our feelings, can spur or inhibit our thinking process, but they cannot, however, affect a change within them. The emotion can influence our thinking, but it cannot change it. The change has to come from within. And this is just a bit technical at this point. Such a change can only be the result of an intellectual power itself, albeit a power of a different nature from the power of conceptualization. So it's an intellectual power itself that limits or that changes the idea. Right now, the analog to this concept. Now, here's where we're going. We're going to say that God himself, therefore, also has revelation and concealment. We're going to explain like this now. This brilliant quote from the Kabbalah is like this, that when it comes to God, God is infinite, right? Good morning, Enid. God is infinite. What does it mean that God is infinite? Infinity means that he could do anything. He's infinite, right? But you know what else he is? He's also finite. He's unlimited, but he's also limited. God is limited. Just think about that for a second. God is almighty, right? But he's also limited. Why? Because if you say that God is infinite and he's not finite, he's no longer infinite. If he's not anything, he's no longer infinite. That's a short circuit there, right? I told you it's going to blow your mind. I can see your mind. I can see the smoke already. It's like, what are you talking about? You see what I'm saying, right? If you say that God is big and not small, it is not big. Because if there's something that he's not, it means he's not everything. You got to really think this one through, right? We're going to look at it inside, in the classic words of the Avodas HaKodesh. Okay? Here it goes. And where we're going with that, by the way, when you say that God is infinite, that's Havaya. When we say that he's finite, that's Elokim. See, if you get it, our natural approach to God Almighty is to say that God is Havaya and Elokim is not
Other
part of
than
him.
that's not-
Concealment is not him. Concealment is like the problem, right? Like he's not the box, he's the package. He's the gift inside, right? He's the light, he's not the vessel.
But I think we start to see that it's not true.
This is how the Rebbe Rashab is evolving, I think.
It's a long way to get to the same point.
No, but it's important. You have to.
Let me just tell you where we're going with this. I want to give you a bit of a take you up in the helicopter for a second. Where are we going with
That's why
this?
he's gonna rewrite it.
That's right. So I have to. Let me take you up in the helicopter for a second. Where we're going. I want to show you the landing spot. What are we going to show with this? And the reason why it's so important to have this conversation here today is because of this. When good things happen to us, we know that God is there. But what about when bad things happen to us? God's not there, right? That's what they tell you. God's not there. Where was God in the Holocaust? Where was God when my mother was this? Where was God during my divorce? That's what people say. And you can see where they're coming from. You can understand that. But where we're going with this didactic is that God has the power to reveal and also the power to conceal. So the answer to where was God in the Holocaust? What's the answer? In the Holocaust. That's the answer. Now, why does he do it? Bear with me.
We can't know why.
Hang on, no. When you say you can't know why, that's before V'yodaita. This book, read the title.
Yeah,
Ah.
we're still not gonna answer why.
You're telling me now that before you learn something that you're soon to learn, you're telling me we're still not going to know the answer why. Are you giving the class? Am I giving the class? Hello, what's going on with me? You're telling me what I'm going to tell you. What I'm not going to tell you. He's coming in with preconceived notions. I'm open-minded, except when it comes to this idea. You see where we're going with this, right? Now, all I'm asking you is to keep an open mind. That's all. But what I want you to realize is that this whole intellectual gymnastics that we're doing here, concealment, revelation, where we're going with this. When we experience the splitting open of the Red Sea, okay, hallelujah. But when you experience a coronavirus pandemic, you're like, oh my, what's going on over here? Where's God? God is in the good like he's in the bad. God is in the night like he is in the day. That's what we say Shema twice a day. Shema Yisrael, Havaya Elokeinu, Havaya Echad, once in the daytime, once in the nighttime. Well, in the daytime, it's easy to recognize God as Hashem Echad. When life is good, when you're paying your bills and your kids are healthy and your marriage is good, right? It's easy to recognize God in the daytime. But when it's nighttime, when the marriage is on the rocks, the kids aren't talking to you, there's no money, you don't know what's flying, right? It's nighttime. Now it's much more complicated to say Shema Yisrael Havaya Elokeinu Hashem Echad. You know, in the morning you might say it with an exclamation mark. At nighttime you might say it with a question mark. You're like, what? Right? You know what I'm saying? Where we're going with this is the first premise is that God is in the good like he's in the bad. He's in the day like he's in the night. He is the day and he is the night. He is the concealment as much as he is the revelation. But to be able to get to that point, you're going to have to meditate on this next Kabbalistic line. You ready? The mind blower.
I'll tell you like, what I think a little bit might be a good concept for your brain. It's a stretch. Like I said, it's a long way to get to one point. But if you just write God is everything, which is I think the ultimate line or the end of the book, people won't.
They'll be like glossed over, right over.
It's the same as that transfer.
They're like very nice, naive, out of touch, checked out of reality. Next.
It's hundreds or thousands of lampshades just to get to that point where you actually understand what it means.
Right. Even though they do give us God is everything. When did they tell us that?
In the first
Hashem Echad. We say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Echad. We say it every day. We just don't know what we're saying. To know God is this discourse. But it's a journey. You see what I'm saying? You see how important it is. So let's wrap this up here with this idea. Bottom of page 11. The analog to this concept can be understood in regard to the the analog to this concept. So we're applying the analogies. Can be understood in regard to the two names Havaya and Elokim. They represent the power of revelation, Havaya, and the power of limitation, Elokim, and they are both drawn from the essence of the Or Ein Sof, God's infinite light, both of them. Just like we said, the power to reveal and conceal comes from intellect, right? The power of revelation, which is identified with the name Havaya, is drawn from the source of the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light. For the light is at one with the source of light. It's therefore representative of the source of light, as explained on the source. So the fact that there's a power of revelation within the infinite light, that's easy. That's easy. Havaya being part of God, no problem. Similarly, the power of limitation and concealment and contraction, which is identified with the name Elohim, is also drawn down from the essence of the Or Ein Sof of the infinite light. For this is its potential for limitation. The infinite light's ability to limit itself is also part, is the name Elohim, is part of the infinite light. For as the Avodas HaKodesh writes, here it is, the Or Ein Sof is the perfection of all things. Infinite light is infinite. Just as it contains an infinite potential, it also contains a finite potential. For were one to say that it contains an infinite potential but does not contain a finite potential, one would detract from its perfection. One more time. For were one to say that it contains an infinite potential but does not contain a finite potential, one would detract from its perfection. Instead, just as it contains an infinite potential, it also contains a finite potential. You can't say that God is almighty except over the Taliban. No, you can't say that. Because if Taliban is not part of God Almighty, then God is not almighty. He's mighty, he's not almighty. He's not infinite. You can't say that God is strong and he's not weak. Because if he's not anything, then he's not truly strong. Right? He's not infinite if he can't be finite. Which is a brilliant intellectual idea that shows us that the light and the dark, the revelation and the concealment are all part and parcel of God's infinity. Infinity, right? The reason why we struggle with this is because we don't relate to infinity. We can't relate to it. We are finite beings. We can only think about it. When we think about it, it clashes with our experience. And that's the short circuit here, right? But at the end of the day, what we've just done today is that we've redefined the very definition of concealment. We looked at concealment from a one-dimensional perspective. We said dark, light, opposites. But now we're saying that darkness is what leads to light. Sunset is what leads to sunrise. Right? You couldn't have a sunrise if you didn't have a sunset. It's the same God that created day and night, right? Let's just finish this idea. This finite potential, the power of limitation within the essence of the Or Ein Sof, is identified with the name Elohim. Since the name Elohim is actually an expression of the essence of the Or Ein Sof, as is the name Havaya is also an expression of God's infinite light, it therefore can be understood that the name Elohim does not conceal the name Havaya. Elohim and Havaya is exactly the same God. You know what it's like? It's like, can you see me now? Can you see me now?
That is good.
No. I'm going to ask you the question again. Can you see me now?
I see you.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Why? You can see my eyes?
I see everything as a whole.
Because this is me. That's why. What you're looking at. If I say to you now, can you see me? The answer is not really, because there's a cup blocking. But if I said to you now, can you see me? The answer is yes, because I'm looking at your hand. It's part of me. The blockage is me. It says it's not blocking me. It's me blocking me. Oh, so I see me. You see me. If me is blocking me, then you. It's when Elohim blocks Havaya, it's not a blockage. You know, you're supposed to have a yarmulke on your head, right? So what happens if you go like this? Is this a yarmulke? No, it's not.
It doesn't count because that's your hand, which is part of you.
I'm covering me with me. That's not me.
You know, that's very interesting. I've not thought that's a good point. It's a great point.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a revelation.
Oh, that's like we finally learned something,
That's
right? So you know what you're supposed to do? You go like this. You know why?
Well,
If you want an emergency yarmulke, then you go like this.
You have to have a sleeve. I did this.
If you got to sleep, exactly. If you want an emergency yarmulke, or another emergency yarmulke could be your phone. You can use your phone. Right? Because that's something separate from you, right?
Take a picture of that.
You see what I'm saying? If you want a really small yarmulke, you get a little coin, right? But this is not a yarmulke, because you can't hide me with me, right? When Elohim covers Havaya, it's not covering nothing. It's like my hand covering my face, and that's this last line here, page 12, middle of page 12. An essence cannot conceal itself. as a person cannot conceal himself with another portion of his own body. You thought I made it up, right? This is reflected in the decision of the Code of Jewish Law in regard to the laws of covering one's head. It is not sufficient to cover one's head with one's hand, although it is acceptable if a colleague covers one's head with his hand. Dan, you can put your hand on his head. He can put his hand on your head, and you'll both have yarmulkes. Because your hand is not part of him.
But if we're all one.
Okay, that's on a deeper level.
Okay.
If that's the case, then the cup is also one with me. Oh, you see? All right. All right. Thank you. Because an essence cannot conceal itself. An essence cannot conceal over itself. Similarly, in the spiritual realms, the name Elohim, which is an expression of the essence of the infinite light, or Ein Sof, does not veil or conceal the name Havaya. We're on track to our answer now. We've redefined the darkness. We said that darkness and light comes from the same source. Therefore, darkness doesn't hide the light. Elohim doesn't hide over Havaya. Concealment of the light is not a conflict with the revelation of the light, because they are one and the same. This is the meaning of Havaya and Elohim are one, that they are both expressions of the essence of the Or Ein Sof. Thus, they are not opposites at all. Although the name Elohim is identified with the power of limitation, it does not limit or conceal the name Havaya at all.
So the entire spiritual portion is all from where?
Spiritual portion of what?
Judaism.
God.
Which book or where did it originate? Like,
God gave it to Moses on Mount Sinai in the Kabbalah, the secret Torah.
It's the Kabbalah, right?
Yeah.
Not the actual written.
I told you, the Kabbalah is the crown jewel of Torah. It's the soul of Torah.
The Kabbalah.
Yeah.
Well, you have the different legs.
Now, let me just say this to you guys. Where we go from here, we're on track to reach the practical section of the discourse. I think we're starting to see the light at the end of the woods here. Because where we're going to go from here in the next section is we're going to go deeper into understanding the nature of concealment. But we're on track, right? So now we understand that concealment is not in conflict with the revelation. So we're on track to understanding that the bad things that happen to us are also from God as much as the good things that happen to us, right? Left hand, right hand, right? Exactly. And God is present everywhere. The question is, why does he need to do this? And that's where we're going to go now. So why does he need to hide the light in the first place? And the answer is going to be, this is where we're going. The answer is going to be, why does God need to give us bad things? Because some lights are so great that you can only reach them when they're disguised. When you experience the tough times, the godly light, the Havaya that's hiding within that, is very, very much more powerful than the Havaya that's in the good times. And because God wanted us to connect with him on the most deepest, intimate level, therefore he sent us the difficult times so that we could make the rational choice of having the correct response and thus connect with the deepest part of Havaya, what normally would never be relatable to us. That's where we're going. All right, we'll call it a day here. Thanksgiving, guys. Lots to celebrate today. Lots to be grateful for. This incredible, profound wisdom of Torah. You're okay? You good?
I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for a lot of things.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, everybody. Elaine, Ratzav Hashuv, this is correct. The Ratzav Hashuv is the give and take of Hashem. I'm going to call it a day. God willing, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, everybody. Shalom. Take care.